Hey friends, Happy New Year. Can you still say that on January 30th? I hope you guys have had a great start to 2023. I have had a book come up in a few of my conversations recently, really several. And I feel like this is a resource that I need to share with you guys. I think it's a topic that means a lot to me personally. And I think that the more people who know about it, the better it's going to be. Maybe for those of you out there who are adults and fall into this category, or maybe you are raising a child who would fall into this category. It's really two resources, but I'm just covering the same subject basically. The highly sensitive child and the highly sensitive person. Hopefully you guys can see these okay. I honestly don't know how to pronounce this lady's last name. Elaine Aron? She wrote both of these. And so here's the one for the highly sensitive person and the highly sensitive child. I first got the highly sensitive child sometime in the last year and then decided, okay, this is actually describing me to a large degree. And so I got the highly sensitive person. This is a trait I basically discovered about myself, like, oh, this is a thing. All of these little random quirks all fit together and it's an actual thing, and I'm not the only person that has some of these quirks. That was like, I don't know, it was like right after I became a mom, so about 6 years ago I started discovering this about myself, and I share it because some things I've read say 15% of the population. Some resources will say about 20%. So whichever number you go by, it's a pretty significant number of people in the population who would be categorized as highly sensitive. And there are 4 criteria that Elaine uses, the writer of these books, she uses to help narrow down. You know, there's things that are like just like kid things, you know, like it's just part of being a toddler. Some of the big emotions and some of the challenge at transition time and stuff like that. But then there are things that if you stack all of these factors on top of each other and you can say yes to all 4 of these things, that is what constitutes being highly sensitive. So to be clear, like all of us have some things that we would be able to relate to in what's being said in these books, but only about 15 to 20% of the population would say, oh, I can say yes to all 4 of these categories. And so the categories spell DOES, D-O-E-S. So it's like an acrostic. So the first is depth of processing. That has to do with really having to unpack your experiences in life. If you've got a highly sensitive child, they will 100% be deep processors. That can look different from child to child and from adult to adult. But after conversations, after events, after a conference, after a day at school, after a game that was played, whatever, I mean, fill in the blank, there will be more depth of processing in a highly sensitive person's mind and heart than the average person. We all process, but to be a highly sensitive person, like to fit that category, you're a person who you process even more deeply than the average person. And you're thinking through subtleties and what someone's tone was like, what the vibe felt like, how you maybe could have improved, or how you missed it on this, or how that encounter took you by surprise, or just you're looking at it from every angle. You're just a deeper processor. Okay, so that's D in the word does. Okay, so then the letter O would be being easily overstimulated. Again, that can look different from person to person. And maybe you're only easily overstimulated in certain ways. Like it could have to do with loud noises. Like maybe loud noises are just, they can just throw you over the edge. Or maybe it's really crowded events with lots of people. Maybe that is what you enjoy but you need in small doses, and then you need some processing time afterward to just kind of like I just need that quiet space to just recharge. So like I said, that can look different from person to person. I'll tell you just from, like a personal example for me. Like I said, I just discovered this about myself since becoming a mom, but it goes back to like my earliest days, my earliest memories, and like, oh my goodness, like these 39 things that I thought were random about my makeup, they all are part of being highly sensitive. And I should probably say before I go any further too, that being highly sensitive is not a disorder. I don't want to confuse this with sensory processing disorder. That is something that relates to sensory things. It relates to some of what we're talking about, but it is a more like severe impairment of normal life, like bigger adjustments need to be made, and it interferes with your everyday life more and can be more of a hindrance. Though, like, don't quote me as some expert. I'm definitely not an expert on any of this. I'm just wanting to share this resource about being highly sensitive, but I do want to just make the distinction between a disorder and then just something that's just a trait. It's just a genetic trait. And so being highly sensitive is a genetic trait that about 15 to 20% of people have. So it is not a disorder, but it's common enough that I believe, and any highly sensitive person would say, like, more people need to know about this, but it's not common enough that most people do know about it. So when they encounter some of these characteristics in some of the people around them, they can be wrongly classified as like, oh my God, like they're just too sensitive, or like something's wrong with them, or that this is some kind of like flaw or disorder or something like that. And so it's not, it's just a trait that causes you to process sensory stimuli at a magnified level in comparison with the remaining 80-ish% of the population. And so yes, like loud noises, like that's a really common one with like most highly sensitive people, is like they can just be really overwhelming. Like I remember as a child, like I didn't want to dry my hair because the hair dryer just felt like a freight train in my ear. And, I just like did whatever I could to avoid that. I mean, to this day, you can ask my husband, you can ask my children, which is kind of comical. The Lord would give me 3 boys. And I mean, if you're going to jump off the cliff and become a mom in general, you can just expect loud noises are part of it. And so knowing this about myself, like I know better now, like how to set boundaries and create margin and like time to recharge and quiet space and that kind of stuff. But, it can be like the way tags feel in your shirt. It can be the temperature that you need to sleep, like what you need the thermostat on to sleep. It can be, it definitely includes like emotional processing, and just like these people tend to have like a more tender makeup, like a tender heart. Maybe some would get their feelings hurt more easily, or maybe not. Like there's just like its expression is as unique as we are as people. But just wanted to make that distinction, that it's not like a problem to fix or a disorder to try to get better from. It's just a trait, and it has amazing strengths. And then the parts of it that are challenging, knowing this about yourself can help you form boundaries and help you know what you need to do in order to thrive, and in order for those parts of your makeup that are more challenging to deal with, like helping those not to be a hindrance in any way, but just knowing how to nourish yourself as an individual so that you're not overdoing it or putting yourselves in situations over and over and over that are not helping you to thrive. And so we talked about the first 2 components, which is depth of processing and being easily overstimulated. Again, that can look different from person to person. And then being both emotionally reactive in general and or being highly empathetic in particular. So really high empathy. That would be the E of the acrostic does. So just extremely empathetic. Am I even saying that right? Like, I hope I've had enough coffee today. Empathetic. That's a word, right? You have lots of empathy. I'm having a moment. You have lots of empathy. You can feel other people's pain, and it causes you to want to do tangible things to help the people around you, and you want to make the world a better place. And so it's a good quality that helps you to easily get outside of yourself. But once you know this quality in yourself, you also recognize, ooh, like I have to have boundaries around this, because as most people know, like you can't allow yourself to dive into the full feelings of all of the hard things that you encounter in life, or all of the people that you're around who are walking through things. Like, you have to be able to have empathy without you personally taking on all of the feelings and the depth of the like emotion, like the weight, from a spiritual standpoint, the spiritual weight of some of the heavy things that you encounter. From a spiritual standpoint, there's the learning what intercession is and how to give that back to Jesus. And I think from just a more of a natural standpoint is just recognizing like that I can care, but I would say motherhood has been really good for me in this regard. And it just like, it was like a switch got flipped for me. I wasn't intentionally, I wasn't trying to make this change in myself, but I feel like the Lord just used motherhood to do it, so that I automatically now, I will care deeply when I hear certain stories about, oh, so-and-so is going through this, pray for them. I will pray for them, but I don't get personally like weighed down in the heaviness of what they are carrying, because I guess to quote Benny Johnson from the book The Happy Intercessor, she says it so beautifully, like, the world is not really being helped by my going into depression because I'm feeling everybody's pain so deeply. And that just so resonated with me. So highly sensitive individuals have deep empathy for others, and that's really good. It just has to be harnessed by the Holy Spirit. And so that's a journey. But as you think about this child you're raising that maybe you're thinking this is them, that's definitely something that would be one of the criteria for being highly sensitive. Is, are they extremely deep in their empathy for others? And then, okay, the letter S. So the final criteria would be like a strong awareness of subtle stimuli. So this would be noticing a big difference if the thermostat is 1 degree higher or lower. Like, it making the difference between like whether you can sleep or not, or subtleties even in your surroundings when you go to an event, picking up on just the overall feeling of a place, or smells would be a big one. Like things that can like cause you to be drawn to an environment or a way. Lighting. Oh, lighting is a big one. Like certain kinds of lighting. Like if you think about fluorescent grocery store lighting versus really soft lamplight, and how one feels really homey and warm and inviting, and the other one feels really cold and like you're in a grocery store. That can really get the wheels turning for a sensitive person, or it can like really like, ooh, I don't even want to go there because I don't like the way it feels. It's just like a strong response to really what other people would say. Oh, wow, I didn't even pick up on that. Or I didn't even, what? Like you noticed the temperature change and like the thermostat was 1 degree different. Like I didn't notice, or no, I didn't think her tone of voice was different, or I didn't think she seemed off today, but yet you're like, ooh, something was off. Like it just felt different. So you're really picking up on those subtle stimuli. And so as a child, if you're talking about children here, like they're really picking up on whether mom or dad, like whether we're in a good mood or a bad mood, or if mom and dad are kind of like disagreeing on something in front of them, but trying to do it nicely. Those highly sensitive children are picking up on every little detail, and will kind of tuck things away, remember them, and then you think they didn't even pick up on what's going on. And then 6 weeks later, hey, remember when da-da-da-da, and you said da-da-da-da, and were you upset? Or, like that kind of thing, like just really picking up on those subtle things. And then even like physical things, like the tag in your shirt, just like you can't wear that shirt because it's driving you crazy, or the seam on the inside of your socks, or whatever it is, different from person to person. And like I said, everybody has a few quirks of like, oh, I just can't sleep without it being like really dark in my room. I would say that's another one for me, like wanting it pitch black. The things around sleep for me are definitely like, okay, this is a lot. You can talk to Andrew about that. But even my childhood friends, I think back on when I would do spend the nights, and it's like I was going around covering up, like if they had a VCR in their room or some kind of music stereo system or whatever, like if it had a little green light because it was turned on or whatever, I had to like go and hang t-shirts over things. And like I really could not have even the tiniest little glimmer of light shining into the room. I would notice it, and it would bother me and make it harder for me to fall asleep. Even like, I remember being in high school, and if we were having a conversation in the car, whether I was the driver or not, I wanted the music off. If I'm talking to somebody, and to this day I'm that way, if I'm trying to have a conversation with you, I don't want a bunch of music playing while we're trying to talk. The music competes for my attention. It's like I'm hearing the lyrics of the song, and it's competing with what your voice is saying. I really want it to be quiet so that I can really take in what you're saying. That's the depth of processing thing. But I think back on those years with my friends and like, wow, that must have really come across like I'm a diva. Like, like you're thinking the world just revolves around you. And I would say that the highly sensitive person or the highly sensitive child may have moments when they're coming across that way of like, God, why can't you be more flexible? What is your deal? Like, why can't I turn the music on in the car? Or why are you being so picky about such and such? Textures and food. Oh, that's an enormous one. Like, so the whole, like, you've got to clean your plate, or you've got to eat such and such, or blah, blah, blah. Now that I have more language for this part of my makeup, I first of all, thank the Lord, my parents were gracious and they worked with me, and they wanted me to try more things as a kid, but they also just recognized over time, like, Haley's just not going to do this. There's not going to be any talking her into doing this until she's ready to try it. And now that I understand this more, I'm definitely not the parent who's going to be like, you have to clean your plate, or you have to finish so-and-so, or you have to try this, or you have to, I'm not going to force a lot of things around food. I mean, yes, we try to get enough substance and fruits and veggies and all of that. But with one of our boys, he has a makeup that's more similar to mine. And I just recognize that, like, he will try the new thing in his time. And if he likes it, he will be all in. He'll never look back, and he'll eat it for, like that'll be what he will live on for like months on end. and that's how I was. But there's no forcing it, and there's a legitimate reason. I remember when I was like forced to try cabbage when I was younger, and I just had told this family member, like, no, like, it's just, no, I don't want to try it. Like, I could just tell from the way it smelled and just looking at it, what I could guess the texture was going to be like. And when I tell you that I basically had to go in the bathroom and dry heave after tasting cabbage, I'm not exaggerating. So it was not me being a kid and like refusing to try something new. It was a legitimate, like, just no, just when I'm ready, I'll try. And so I share all this simply to say, I think there's a lot of parents out there with children who are highly sensitive. And if you don't have a framework for understanding where they are coming from and that this is real, and yes, there are toddler things that are just toddler things, that they just have big feelings sometimes that transition. So you've got to discern, like, what's them just being little and they're growing and they're learning, and what is being highly sensitive. And I think it takes time, and I think resources like the ones I've mentioned here can help. The highly sensitive child, the highly sensitive person. I think having these resources can give a framework. And I especially wanted to share this also with teachers, because, you're teaching even 10 kids I would say probably at least one will end up having that highly sensitive makeup, and it's not a problem. It doesn't mean that they're going to be introverts either. I think more than half of highly sensitive people are introverts, but many are extroverts. I'm an extrovert, but I think that part of my makeup looks like I'm not going to show you all of my cards the minute I'm in an environment, or the first time I meet you, or the first time I'm, in this new place. I'm going to kind of get a feel for things. And it's all of that like stimuli coming in. It's like I kind of have to get a feel for what in the world's going on. And then I'll show more of my extroverted side. So as teachers, as you think about your students, you just can't make assumptions from the get-go of like, oh, they're really shy or they're really this. It's not that with a lot of students, and certainly with highly sensitive children. It's that they just need a minute. They need a minute to like figure out their new environment, and to figure out what the expectations are, and what this place smells like, and how many classmates do I have again, and what's expected of me, and where's my seat again? What does the seat feel like? Like, what does my viewpoint in the classroom look like? And just like they're finding like their spot. And so, yeah, I share this just in hopes of offering a framework for those of you out there that maybe this will ring a bell, and maybe you're supposed to get this resource. And I'll say, just like with reading any other book, first of all, these two books are not written from like a Christian or spiritual perspective. So just know that going in. It's not written with the aim of like tying it all to scripture. And so if you're a believer reading this, just know, just like any other book, there will be meat to chew up and bones to spit out. They will say things like highly sensitive people tend to be more prone to anxiety or depression or blah, blah, blah. I personally don't receive any of that, because that's not true of what Jesus has died to offer me. He came to offer life, and life more abundantly. And so I have the biblical framework I'm bringing to anything that I read. So I just will say that, exercise your Bible knowledge as you read, and don't just take everything that's written in any book to be the gospel truth, but do receive the tools that God has for you to just help equip you. So hopefully this is helpful to some of you out there. If you think that this might be you or one of your children, I would recommend you getting this book. If you have any other questions, like I said, I'm not an expert. I just have discovered this about my own makeup. So I can I can say a lot about what this trait has looked like for me, and through some of what I've read. But yeah, don't hesitate to reach out if this is something that's like kind of got your wheels turning and you want to talk about it further. Just knowing I'm not an expert. I just wanted to share this and pass this along as a hopefully helpful resource to some of you out there. I hope you guys are getting a great start to 2023, and who knows, maybe I'll jump on here again soon with another book to recommend.